that movie. So without further ado, I'm going to start the meeting. And I think Alan wants to say a couple of words, and then we're going to go on with our special guest. Alan, go ahead.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Am I echoing?
Alan. No, you're not.
I'm not? Okay.
No, you're.
Let's start.
Well, I guess you
Usually we start our sessions with a moment of silence. So let's close our heads. Close our eyes, bow our heads, and think about those who are not with us today, especially those who left the Philippines to come to America to put a roof over our heads, food into our stomachs, so that we can enjoy the life in America. Thank you. Now, let me start off with is Emily here? Emily, did you make it?
She's not on yet.
Okay. She was trying. Fonts tonight has 4 sessions, and we're one of them. And Emily's our president, and she is hopping around, and she tried to make it, but she couldn't. So here we will start with a share. Now, we're going to go very low-tech here because I don't know how to do PowerPoint. So this is our schedule, and Max, you'll be the timekeeper. And we'll just start off here. We did the welcome. And I'm going to start with all of you guys should have this. And all these little blue things, they're called hyperlinks, which Arnell introduced to me. And they're really cool. So I'm going to start off with the background. Background, okay? Can you guys see that?
Yep, we can see it, Alan.
Okay, 1898, the Philippines become a colony of the United States, and the Filipinos became classified as nationals. In 1901, there were approximately 500 American students disembarked from the USS Thomas, which began the colonization process. They were called the Thomasites, and they included 346 men, 180 women, and they arrived because the Americans felt in order to conquer the Philippines, they wanted to do it by establishing a public school system and to teach basic education, which is like math, reading, and to use English, and to train Filipinos to teach and indoctrinate the people. So to civilize Filipinos, American institution was instilled. And so it was the value of an education that's what the Americans brought. And education became the tool of the indoctrination process of the greatness of America, the land of the free and democracy, where everyone is equal. And the whole prize for this whole thing is getting a college degree from an American university to become successful. And English became the dominant language. So by 1912, that's when you had schools were now available to all parts of Luzon. And it was about this time is when you had the first graduating Filipinos that went through the American educational system. Oh, let's do it this way. Oh, here we go. Can you see that better now?
Yep, that's good, Alan.
Okay.
Yeah, there.
And that's when Filipinos started to take over the teaching. And mostly these teachers were the schools, of course, started around the big cities, and by the time it came to the provinces, you didn't have the American teachers, but you had more than likely you had the Filipino teachers. And so you started doing some math approximately 1922 and the mid 1920s. That's when you had the first significant number of Filipinos graduating. They went through the whole elementary to high school system. They were able to read and write English. And for those in the provinces, the next step was to go to America and get a college degree and then come back. Now, as American nationals, they didn't need a passport. And so the father of the land or owner of the land, in order to get their child to America to get a college education, all they had to do was buy or sell stock, not stock, but they sold land and animals and to buy that 3-week boat ticket to America. So given that they were going to sell this stuff and coming from a very poor rural area, the question becomes, which one of your kids would you send? You know, would you send your dumbest kid? You know, I don't think so. You probably send your most brightest kid, your smartest kid, the kid that's very has street smarts and could survive in America, because the one thing you have to remember, when they came to America, there was nobody here to greet them. So they were on their own. And really the only thing that they had was each other. Because on that 3-week boat ride over, you had all these, you know, Filipinos bonding, and they're probably dreaming where you're going to go, that kind of stuff. So that background. And one of those people, as you could see, is this guy called Fabian Bergano, who is my dad. This is Franklin High School, 1928, and he was a member of the Filipino Club. That's him right there, okay? So that's basically the setting of this first batch of my father and our uncles that came in the mid-20s. So now we're going to go to Pio. And Pio, oh well, this is what I call Pio Zoom. This is what they had to face. Now these hyperlinks are to articles. You know, they have the articles on the Ku Klux Klan, the vigilantes, the alien land laws that apply to Filipinos. So you could flip through all that. And in Seattle, you have these things here. Well, let me just turn on one of the hyperlinks so you can see what this thing actually does. So that's Pio's dad. He was an important figure who was able to, he went to court and was able to win so that Filipinos could actually own property and housing in Seattle. So we've got some articles there. Here's Pio Decano Sr.'s bio. Look at that real quick. He was from the Ilocos Sur, Santa Maria, again from the province. And this gentleman here, well, Pio was his houseboy in the Philippines, and he went to Manila, and then he went to Hawaii. And you can see this, he sold vacuum cleaners door to door. Then he went to San Francisco, and eventually wound up in Seattle. And that's where he started to hook up into the salmon cannery industry with Boone Dip Young. And he established the Decano company he established, where he was able to give labor, supply labor to the salmon canneries, and he did this into his 70s. What's important about Pio Decano Sr. is that he became the first president of the Filipino community, and that banquet and ball you'll see later on a picture was in 1935, commemorating the establishment of the Philippine Commonwealth. And he married Pio's mom, and he served the community. And again, that's his main contribution, was that he went to court and won. So a lot of like our fathers and our uncles, you know, when they came to America, they were never told about discrimination and racism. So they kind of like on the job learned about it and how they had to fight through it, and we're going to tell their story. So, P.O., we'll start off with you. That was your father's bio. So, P.O., go ahead and describe your father.
Well, first of all, thank you, Alan, for organizing this. This is really you're trying to capture a lot of highlights here with respect to Filipino American history. But yes, my father was one of those individuals who was working on a farm. He was taking care of, his primary focus was taking care of the Carabao on this land, and which he didn't own. And I'm not sure who owned it, but eventually, when he was making his money here in Seattle, he went back and bought some property. But that's another story. At any rate, the teacher, Mr. Charles Simpson, came from Lawrence, Kansas, and ended up in Santa Maria, Ilocos Sur, and he hired my dad as a houseboy. And according to my father, my dad learned English, and he learned about the institutions that were created by the Constitution of the United States, and at the urging of Mr. Simpson, who he later came and visited us at the place my dad won in the 40s. At any rate, he urged my father to go to the Philippines and make his, go to the U.S. and make his mark there, because that's where he could make a living and bring up a family in a democratic country. My father went down to Manila when he was 16, and the recruiters for pineapple plantations told him, go to Hawaii, and you don't need you don't need a passport or anything. They issue you a paper. A document which allowed Filipino nationals to travel between the islands and U.S. territories and the mainland. My father went to Hawaii, worked in the pineapple plantations for 3 days, and he shared with me that he said he got so tired of doing the same thing he was doing in the Philippines at terrible wages that he said, I'm going to the mainland. And your description of him landing in San Francisco, and he got a job as a cook on a train from San Francisco to Las Vegas or Reno, one of those two, but he still wasn't meeting his goal of having his own business. And recruiters from the salmon canneries, and I imagine they were recruiters, Chinese American recruiters, and that's how he got in contact with Goon Dip Young. He came to Seattle, worked in the Alaskan canneries, and he worked a lot of different jobs. So he understood what jobs were really easiest to do and the ones that he could adapt to. Goon Dip Young schooled him on how to get more Filipinos into the salmon canning industry. At the time, many of the Chinese laborers were moving on because they had moved into the economy of the United States in different status. The opening jobs for many of the Filipinos in the United States on the West Coast were labor intensive, and the same held true for the need for labor intensive cannery workers. My father tapped into that. He recruited many of his relatives and townmates from Ilocos Sur, and they would come to the United States, and he would give them immediate employment in Alaska. He would provide employment. And I want to make mention now, he was a labor contractor, which is anathema to many pro-labor individuals. But at the same time, he understood the need for them to be in the newly formed Alaskan Samurai Cannery Workers Union. And he went and paid their union dues, which was a very different step than what the previous labor contractors had done. And as you mentioned, he became the first president of the Filipino community in Seattle after he had established Decano and Company, and well, it was before he established Decano and Company. And he made money by working also with or investing with white businessmen, and eventually they took him for a lot of money. But the racism is pretty apparent. Filipinos couldn't own land, and sexism was at work also, because my auntie, his sister, who came to the United States, purchased a house from a company in Seattle. Her name is on the deed, and she gave that house to my dad for $1 to change the name on that deed. And my read on it is because the lawyer that my father hired, Austin P. Griffiths, recognized that a male owner of a house would have a better chance of winning any legal matters that were bound to come up with respect to my dad's challenge to the law preventing Filipinos from owning land in the state of Washington. The discrimination that he faced was, he understood how Filipinos were looked on with respect to the color of their skin and not being worth the jobs that they were applying for.
Yeah. Pio, was he the first one to challenge the land law?
That's a good question. I suspect he was, because I'm sure it was talked about in the meetings they would have at the Filipino community, and because he was in the business, he had a thriving business, you would have a better chance of winning any legal matters that would come up. That's my assumption.
Okay, that's fine.
2 minutes, Pio. 2 minutes. 2 minutes.
And probably he was like, and he was also the president of the community. That's probably why he partly challenged us. So basically, what is the significance of his victory?
The significance of the victory, it opened the doors for Filipino Americans to own land, and it affected, I'm sure, the rest of other people of color, Chinese, Japanese, but that didn't prevent redlining from happening.
Okay, we're going to go through some pictures here, Pio. Describe, this is your dad, and what is he wearing?
He's wearing a Caballeros de Mazalang. And de Mazalang was a Masonic lodge, and it was named after Jose Rizal's pen name. He named, and Jose Rizal.
60 seconds. 60 seconds.
Okay.
Okay.
We're going. We're moving here. This is a picture of your family.
Yes, and that's me, the altar boy.
Which one, to the left or right?
Sitting next to my mom, okay. Romero. And before she was where my dad left off in terms of his anti-discrimination fights. My mom, you can see her in the middle of this picture.
30 seconds. 30 seconds.
She fought the unions, which allowed her finally to become a member of the machinist unions, Aeromechanic Union, when she worked for Boeing.
That's in Boeing. Good.
Yeah.
And this is that picture of the 1935, the first actually formal dinner banquet for the Filipino community. That's in
Yeah,
1935.
my father was sitting at the head table, and it was a joint decision, I believe, by the leaders and the officers and the general population of the Filipino community to designate him as a representative for this, bringing all the law.
Time has expired. Time has expired.
We got to move, Pio. Okay, so how would you, how do you think the Pinoys of the 20s and 30s should be remembered?
Oh my God, they were tough. The ones that I was associated with, primarily growing up with going down to the lodge and working in Alaska with these older Filipinos, the endurance that they had really sparked me to keep on going in education, going to education. They would say, Junior, you go to school, you stay in school. You go to school and stay in school. And I use that heavy accent as a term of endearment.
That's right.
That's
And we're going through your pictures here, and you did serve our country. So thank you.
I wear this.
And now, what is the words of wisdom can you share for those on the journey to become better Filipino Americans?
Well, you are good to start with. You don't have to be better. You're great to start with. And you keep that and education and learning technical skills and staying with the moves in technology and stay a step ahead. So you're always in a leadership position.
Tapos na. Tapos na.
Oh, for Christ's sake, one more minute.
Thank you, Pio. Let's give Pio a hand here, huh? Okay. Next up, we have Manang Lorena. And this is her little Zoom thing. Again, these are the laws and kind of the background of the anti-Filipino sentiment back in those days. So these are articles on the Yakima Valley that you guys could look at later on. And this is Uncle Harry's bio. And well, you guys will have it, but it's kind of cool that what he has here is written. Well, you guys can review that at a later time. While I scroll on down to this next one here. This one here was written by a Washington State senator, and basically he is saying that he has, I like this one paragraph here where it says, at no time did he ever advocate violence as a way to solve problems, but he solved them through love, hard work, and understanding. And that was basically Uncle Harry, very, very, quite a gentleman, very fortunate to actually know him. And there's a picture of Uncle Harry. And he was born he came to the United States in 1927. He was born in Bacnotan, La Union in 1907. So Lorena, describe Uncle Harry and his friends. Unmute. Lorena, are you here? Somebody has to unmute her. Unmute Lorena.
Okay, can you hear me?
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So he came from Bacnotan, La Union, so the Ilocano portion of the Philippines, and He came over in 1927, probably prior to maybe 1926. But just like Pio said, they came over by ship. At the age of 17, that's when he left the Philippines. And he and some others from his own barrio came over together. And like what he told me was, or told us, I would reiterate it all the time, that they earned money and they kept the money that they earned because they had plans to come to America. They had heard, it's greener pastures and everything. But they were at the age of 17, and apparently they couldn't travel until they were supposed to be older, so they assumed different names. So he came over on a different name, but his real name was Gervasio Buxit. But he came over all the way from the Philippines, and they came all the way to Hawaii. And the passage that they had paid was only till Hawaii. They didn't have any more money. So just like Pio said, his father got off in Hawaii too, so maybe they were all there together, who knows. But they ended up working in the pineapple plantations for, probably a couple, 2 or 3 weeks. And then they were able to earn the money enough to get passage again to come down to San Francisco, the mainland. So they ended up probably passing through Seattle and all the way down to San Francisco, and stayed there for a little while, but he wasn't satisfied. They came from a farming barrio in the Philippines. So in San Francisco, probably there was a lot of people there already, and jobs were very scarce. Well, they heard about the Seattle, Alaska Union, which Pio was saying your dad had a lot to do with that. Well, so they all came up. There were probably about 4 of them, I think, that really stuck together. And so they came up to Seattle, got recruited for the Alaska fisheries. And he, like I said, he was a farmer. The fishing didn't appeal to him, so they stayed there for that one session or season, I guess, and then they decided to come back, but they never went back. There were quite a few of them that came from Alaska that, ended up in Seattle with him, but they had heard about Wapato or the Yakima Valley, where there was a lot of farming, a lot of land, and that enticed them to come because that was their vision, was to be able to own land and farm. So he ventured over to Seattle. He had probably 4 or 5, like I said, close friends. There were uncles, relatives, close relatives, and some that were just barrio friends. So they came over to Seattle and found their way over to Wapato. And that's where it all started. And I could never understand how he found Wapato, like clear across the ocean, clear across here to the United States. But that's what enticed them to come. So when they came and they worked sharecropping with other farmers that were here, Caucasian farmers that were already settled here. And so they worked the land with the farmers that were here in the hop fields and the potato fields, sugar beets. And then they decided, well, why are we working with somebody? Let's try to own our land. Well, that wasn't so easy because there was an anti-Filipino, anti-law land that no immigrant could own property. So this ended up with that alien land law. So they were able to, just stay there for a while where they were working, and then eventually, like Pio said, they started this movement about the land law, and they befriended a lot of the Native Americans, which Yakima Valley is a Indian reservation, and the Indians here were very friendly to the Filipinos. They got together, and I think probably because they're people of color, and so they were able to befriend them. And the Native Americans, the Yakima Nation, Yakima Indians, were able to give them some land because they own the land here, so they let them lease a little bit of land. And then they formed, my dad and some of the Filipinos that came over, they helped each other. And so they tried farming, you know, like I said, the sugar beets and tomatoes and all these other things. But then they were not really welcome by the community here. The residents that were here were already established, and they were not too friendly with the immigrants. They did not like the influx of immigrants. And so that
what
kind
happened?
of stirred the pot a little bit.
What happened for that
Lorraine.
anti-Filipino
5
riot
minutes.
in
5 minutes.
November
5
1927?
Okay, that's what I was getting to. In 1927, they had heard that there was a mob forming to try to get the Filipinos out of the valley. And so they had formed this mob, and they were given an ultimatum to leave by 6 p.m. that afternoon. And it was in the late fall, so it was kind of cold. So they were kind of, you know, like really kind of worried, and they didn't know what to do. Well, they armed themselves with whatever they had, and they were hiding in the ditches and in the housing that they had. And Dad said that he remembered they were just sitting in the house trying to figure out what they were going to do. And finally, they said 6 o'clock was coming around, and here comes a car, and 3 men came walking out. And he said that they were so afraid, they didn't know what they were doing. They were starting to panic, actually. But then, as the 3 men came closer, they noticed they were from the sheriff's department, and they came to tell them that they didn't have to worry because they had disbanded the mob, and they would be safe. So they were freed from that. But different times, the Filipinos were jailed. Dad said he was jailed certain times because of, friction. And one of the reasons why they were so hostile towards some of the Filipinos had, they were very musical, and they would have parties and everything. And a lot of the women, because the Filipinos didn't have any women here. My dad said there were no women here. Okay. Anyway, so that's what caused some of the families here. But a lot of the families here, the French, the Germans, and everything, were also friends of our family. How many minutes did you say? I got to talk fast. Anyway,
okay. 2 minutes.
So that's okay. So that's what happened. But my dad, I think his vision was to be able to, farm, and they finally leased the farm. And then in 1945, when the land law was already dissolved and everything, he was able to buy the property that we're on here. That's where I am right now. Yeah. And he was the first Filipino to own some land here in the valley. Yeah. And others then were starting to be able to come.
Now we'll go some pictures real quick. There's Uncle Harry, and this is during the Labor Day. They would have this big celebration, and I'll always remember the beautiful floats made of vegetables and fruits that were raised on the farm, and they make these elaborate decorations. This is your community. This is what your community looks like. What's this, about 1950, Lorena?
Probably 1950, probably 1952.
Is that you right here?
Those were our Christmas celebrations. Let's see, where am I? I'm there.
That's you?
I'm here. Where am I? Where? I don't know where I am.
Now this is, I love this picture here because this is probably sent back to the Philippines, and what the Filipinos in the Philippines were looking at is Uncle Harry has a tractor. I mean, they don't have tractors back in the Philippines, and so this is kind of cool for him to send, because like a lot of other people would send like fancy cars and stuff like that, but no, Uncle Harry wanted a picture of his family, his wife, his daughter, and his tractor. So what is the significance of the Pinoys of the Yakima Valley?
Well, you know, because of the pioneers, the Filipinos now have established themselves here in the community, and they're very well respected. You know, they're economically stable. They have farms. They have big farms here. Some of the ones that have just arrived are lucky because their relatives or, you know, their uncles or whatever had already established the land and they took over. So now we have some of the largest Filipino farmers here contributing to the economy. And I can say, you know, because our valley is so small, we have a lot of connections with the Native Americans. We're very multicultural. And we have made a name for ourselves. I mean, this is like our bragging rights here, I'm sorry. But we have the Filipino community that was erected it was inaugurated in 1952. And it stands today as one of the community landmarks here. And we're trying to get it into the book of whatever, what do you call the important points of the valley. So we are able to, you know, hold our heads up high, and we're really proud to be able to be here. And we're really good friends with the Native Americans. And like I said, there's Japanese, Filipinos, and we're all, you know, we're all friendly. We're all friendly with each other.
And wrapping up,
And
what are your words of wisdom? What are your words of wisdom that you could share to become better Filipino Americans?
I would say, love your culture. Always be proud of your culture and pick out the best things in both, whatever you are. If you're Native Americans and Filipino or whatever, pick out the best traits that you can put to make yourself better, and study hard and try to achieve more than what our forefathers had, because you have all the opportunities. It's all sitting out here for you. And always remember, you are Filipino, and be proud of your heritage.
Okay. Thank you. Let's give it a hand for Manang Lorena, huh? And now we have Claire. Let's see, Claire's Zoom. Let's see, Claire. Bio. This is Claire's bio. She's in the Philippines right now, and she's a filmmaker, producer, and you can read her bio. I'm kind of gotta move a little quicker here, but let's see. Okay, Claire, how did you learn about the racism and discrimination Filipinos encountered in the 1920s? How did you learn about it?
I learned about it on Facebook. There was an article that went viral. The Slate article that I think you have a link to in the materials.
Oh, okay.
It was an article that came out in Slate that talked about this this incident, this massive act of violence that happened in 1927, and it had been, at the time the article came out, it had been like 90 years since that happened. Mm-hmm. And the author of the article, attorney Steve Ross, was just marveling in a kind of horrified way at how alike it seemed. You know, the sentiment, the anger, the hatred was very much the same as what had just happened in North Carolina at the time. Mm-hmm. Okay. So the parallels were just too eerily similar. I was shocked. I was like, and amazed as well, because according to the comments to the article, hardly anybody had even known about this incident. So that was a bit of a revelation. Number one, nobody knew about it. And number two, it was just so disturbing that it was happening all over again.
And how did that make you feel?
I felt that because we were in the middle of starting work on the documentary, I felt a sense of urgency, feeling that the time was now to amplify these stories, to give voice to people who have not been given the opportunity to speak up about about the discrimination they experienced, the difficulty of trying to assimilate into an adopted land, and all the obstacles that they ran into. So there was a feeling of urgency. I felt that this is a project that we really had to dig our heels into and start working even more earnestly to get it done.
And here's the million-dollar question. Although you are based in the Philippines, why are you and your company determined to do a documentary on the Filipino-American experience?
I've been thinking a lot about this question, and I think the way I like to ask myself is, who is it that gets to tell our stories? And I think we all have that responsibility. For me, being able to tell these stories is almost like an act of resistance. It affirms to me that I have a voice and I need to use it. I believe that in telling our stories, we have the responsibility, I think, to tell stories is rooted in two things. And number one, that would be blood. We try to carry on whatever our parents valued. In my case, it would be my mother. She valued these stories. And so this is part of my kind of like my gift to her, my tribute to her. So I carry on that work in the same way that many of us are carrying on the work of our parents. And the second would be experience. And regardless of what my passport says, I believe that my experience of having been raised American as a Filipino, I have roots there. I have roots, I have family, I have memory. And so this is my way of kind of reconnecting with that memory and keeping it alive. And I believe a work like this is even more important now in order to bridge generations, as well as where we're located. I think it's going to be a bridge between Filipino Americans and Filipinos here in the Philippines who might not know our shared history. And so I think it's a really great opportunity to tell both sides, to tell everybody's side of the story. I think experience is just not something that can be contained in a piece of paper. So. Very,
very, very good. And at this time, I'm gonna hand it over to you, and you're gonna show a work in progress on,
That's right.
on the documentary. And well, go ahead and describe what your project is and set up this clip that you're gonna show.
Okay, what this is an excerpt that we filmed in Yakima. It's a 7-minute excerpt. And this is how the story looks as of today. If you've ever worked with film, it's very much a work in progress. As we learn new things, as I think the audience that we're speaking to changes and demands certain things and need to learn certain things, the project kind of morphs to adapt to that. So we're just trying to fill in the gaps, the knowledge gaps, in a way that is very visceral so that you can kind of like immerse yourself in the experience of the Manongs in this case. So I'm going to play this now. If you have headphones, use them, but we do have closed captions so you can read the dialogue.
Can you make it bigger? Because some of us are senior citizens over here.
It should be your full screen right now.
Okay.
Do you see it as a full screen?
I see darkness.
Yeah, that should be, yeah, it would be dark. Because
yeah. Can you hear it?
Yeah. Yes.
That's good, working.
We are headed to an old Presbyterian church, and it was built probably in the early 1900s. When Filipinos came into the Yakima Valley, they needed a place to stay. They stayed on close to the hop fields, or in this case, they were allowed to stay in the church. And so about 2 years ago, we came out to the structure, and inside of it, those Manongs who came in the 30s, it seems like they wanted to be remembered. We're headed to East Yakima, a place called Moxie.
So have you been out of mischief, Cherie?
Yeah.
Cherie, her family, they were French. And a lot of the French people were here in the valley. She was saying, you know, that her family used to, you know, mingle with my mom and dad. Some of the families there also hid some of the Filipinos, you know, when they were being attacked or, you know, prejudice was very blatant then.
It's very dark there, and when it's hot, you can't believe how hot it is upstairs for those people, your people, to be living up there. And up there he drew pictures on the wall of his sweetheart, and he signed his name, and he put dates down there, and they're all up there, and they're getting now to the point where they should be restored because they're fading away. And it is a mess, and nobody goes out there, and you're going to have to pick your way, and I am sorry, but you want to see it, so come on. Okay, guys.
Interesting. Found some old potato bags and everything over here, Manang. Writing tablet. Nothing in it.
These are the old barrels.
There are nail holes on the wood, and I feel some nails here. No, it was probably.
Maybe they were small packs.
No, it's because it was maybe there was a cover to it, maybe some plywood panels.
This must have been the more or less the heater, Ray.
Oh, really?
Because you know, see, there's a lid. Maybe this is what kept the. Although they just lived here during the summer, I wonder, not the winter.
Used to have stuff on it.
Yeah, there's some more here. It's faded already.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's on my camera at home because it came up before. I'll have to check it out to see.
As I said, nobody comes here. address. Yeah, you can see where it is, the name, and
some of the walls have already caved in. They've fallen apart.
Wow.
That was amazing, Claire. Really amazing. Give her a big round of applause for that. That was well worth the wait. Alan, I'm going to have you moderate. It's 9:11 now.
Moderate. Okay. If you guys want to make a donation, what you have to do for now is go to our Fonz HR website and just, I think, Arnell, we've got a PayPal thing there where you could just make a donation. But what gets me was when you see the writings on the wall. When I worked in Alaska, for 10 years during the summer to pay for my education. And the walls, that's for reals. I mean, you had Monoms write their names back in the, you'll see the writings on the wall. And that's a legacy that when I saw those writings on that wall, I just come to tears because it just comes back to me that, these guys are some hardworking guys. They fought back with what they had against some of the most blatant racism, discrimination that anybody could go through. And a lot of people, the only thing they had each other.
Thank you.
But
Claire,
I just want to thank everybody for coming.
Wait, hold on, Alan. Sorry.
Oh, hold on, Ray.
Okay.
Well, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna ask Claire. Max Frias is willing to donate $100, and I'm sure a lot of people are too. Can you put in the chat the best way to donate to getting this film made?
Like Alan suggested, I think the best way for now is to donate through Fonz because we are a Filipino company, and so there are geographical restrictions that don't allow us to directly receive funds in that way. Hopefully later on we would have partnered with an American film producer, I guess, to just help us put up some kind of like a crowdfunding or a more meaningful relationship. So at the moment, Alan, I think, is setting up a link on.
Okay.
And then we have, if you want updates to follow our progress, I put in some links in the chat. So I'll share those links again for Facebook and all our social media.
Yeah. So thank you. As I'm looking at the chat, guys, there's some information on there too. So make sure you guys are looking at the chat for some of these links and how to get onto the Dreamland website in terms of some of their information on social media. I think that'll be there it is. Thank you, Claire. Stories from Dreamland on Facebook is a really good way to do that. I just have one, I know we're over time, but I have one quick question for you, Claire. Like Alan, when I saw those writings on the wall in the pictures from the ancestors, when you saw that for the first time, how did you feel when you saw that?
It wasn't with the crew on that round, but I've seen this clip too many times to mention, and each and every time, it's very difficult to watch. It made the crew cry. It still makes us cry when we watch it. I think because they just wanted to leave a piece of themselves behind. And this is what we're trying to preserve by doing a project like Dreamland. The crumbling of the walls is almost like a metaphor for the stories that they left behind. It's like, it's urgent, it's important. And so even though I didn't come into this looking for donations, it was Alan who suggested it, because this is a labor of love on my part. This is something that I promised my mother I would finish. So thank you so much for the opportunity to share some of our process with you.
That was really amazing. And I know we are 15 minutes over time, but guess what? Good things happen to those who wait, right? And we were blessed to see that video. So before we kind of round up here, first, let's give a big virtual round of applause for our presenters, Pio, Lorena, and also Claire. Give them a big round of applause. Thank you guys so much for sharing your stories with us all here in this very historic Fonz Now moment, October 1st. So one of the things that we want to do in terms of, and remind you guys, I was looking at the highest point in our Zoom meeting. We have 33 people at one time, maybe 35. That's a whole lot of people. And I know that we had some technical difficulties, but hey, you know what? We're going to get through them, or we're going to make them better, and it's going to be more solid when we go through the next time as well. I believe, and Alan's going to correct me if I'm wrong, I know that Mel Orpelia is going to do his No History, No Self presentation as the next Fonz Now presentation. And if any of you guys are involved with any youth groups or know any youth, this would be a great presentation for them to watch, because it's classic. It's one of those things that I kind of got me into Fonz, so much so that I'm wearing a shirt that has it on my chest. So definitely, if you have youth around or any youth groups or anyone really, this was going to be another great presentation. Alan, can you tell them what that's going to be, or you already? I
have a question really quick.
Oh, sure. I'm sorry.
Yeah, because I had sent the link for the kids to fill out the forms, and I sent an email to Alan about this. But if they are not members of Fonz, it doesn't allow them to move forward in the form because they have to select a chapter and stuff. Is there a way to make those questions not required? So then that way they can, register for it and get the links and all that good stuff. Because I do have students that want to come, but then they ask me and I'm like, I don't know. So they can fix that form. That'd be awesome.
No, yeah, we're just, there's a question that says, are you a Fonz member? Just check no.
There's other questions on there that ask for chapter, and those are all required. So if you can make those not required, then it'll allow them.
My tech person that's working on it.
Okay.
I'll ask her to do that.
Just not to be required. That would be.
No, it's not to be required.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
But let me just share this one last thing here. Towards the here's the schedule. Well, you all have this in the write-out. There's the No History, No Self, the 12th, the 25th, the 27th, and tentatively you've got the Legacy of Fonz, which is going to be very exciting. You're going to have surprised guest speakers who are going to pop up and share their moments as far as their fondest moment of Fonz and where do they think Fonz is going and that kind of stuff. So keep that on your calendar. And then there's the Filipino Youth Activities of Seattle. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more sessions left. And then by then we should reach our goal of $100,000 for Claire. With that said, let me stop share and we could hang out, or you're free to go and you just want to chat. Go ahead and unmute yourself and say hi to my classmate, Roosevelt 1971 in Wisconsin, Mr. Dave Watts, who's a professor, correct, Dave?
Well, I'm retired, but I was mainly a doctor, medical doctor. But I did some teaching in the medical school.
Oh, you sandbagger, you.
I want to say something, Ray. I just wanted to say, Claire, you showed a small clip about that film, but actually, for those who was not at the conference in Chicago, that's just a small clip of the entire movie, and it's so emotional. You realize why we go crazy volunteering for Fonz, because we're here to share our stories. And it's so emotional. That's just 10 minutes. But when you see an hour of it, you just leave crying. Maybe Max and Alan can say something about it, but I was emotionally moved, Claire, and I'm so glad you joined me.
I just like the way the photography was. When you started to go up those steps, and the mood changed and had that little piano thing, I go, wow, I felt it. I mean, I felt like I was right there, and you could just feel the heat. If you guys never been in Yakima, it's awfully hot, but it's a dry heat. But anyway, it does get awfully hot.
It's hot.
And when you go upstairs, I just felt the dust, the mold, and how
everything was there.
Yeah, it was just. Well, Lorena, you said you took pictures of the place, and go ahead. You could talk about.
Well, yeah, I was the one that. Yeah, I was the one that she contacted me, and because we're friends, family friends, and she said, I have some historical writings on my wall in the church. So I said, really? And she said, yeah. But she said, so I went there. Ray and I, I went, and then I asked Ray to come. And we were supposed to go prior to that, but things kept happening. But when we went, I couldn't believe that, the writings on the walls, they're there. And I mean, it gives you goosebumps, to think, oh, this is the way they had to, keep themselves motivated. They drew on the walls, but she's so worried that it was going to collapse, until that's why she wanted us to go. And so when Claire's group came, we brought them up there, and I mean, it was dusty and everything, but like you said, it's very moving to think that they live there. But she will not let anybody else go in there. We're the only ones that go in. So they have the the true, authentic picture of that church. She's very anxious to see it also, because their family were pioneers here. There's, probably second, third generation already, but it was very, very touching just to go in there too. So, and Claire, it was really nice the way your photographers and your group did it. It was very nice, and she really appreciated that you took the time to go and see it, and she said they were very polite and everything. So thank you, Claire. Thank you for the photographers, and we really enjoyed their company too.
Thank you for your trust, guys.
Thank you, everybody. You guys can hang out. I got to plan my lessons for tomorrow for the children.
Thanks, Ray.
I'll see you guys later. Thank you. Bye. You guys can stay on.
Thank you. Bye, Ray. So, yeah, Claire, we have some donations coming in too. So, can you hear me, Claire?
Yes.
Okay.
Still here. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
thank you.
We have some, and I was just told, somebody called and said, they're donating $1,000, and so we will. I didn't know where to, I didn't ask Alan. We hadn't decided exactly what we were going to do to pay it, but now that we know, we can start bringing it all in.
I think we should funnel it to you there, Madam Lorena. Since Uncle Harry was the treasurer, you could be the treasurer for this whole operation. Hey, it's fitting, right? I mean, that's because people were saying, what's the most important officer in a Filipino organization? It's the treasurer. It's the ones that handle the money. So we'll just ship it to the Yakima Valley chapter. Maybe we could funnel everything that way, because Claire knows you a lot better than me. I'm out here, on the East Coast. At least you're a little bit closer.
Not really.
Not really.
Whatever.
So is that okay though, Madam Lorena? Because I think you be, well trusted. You come from a very, very good, honest family from the Yakima Valley. Hey, why not? Because you figure that's the site of the first anti-Filipino riots, and now you're going to be the center for donations to give back to get the history correct. So that's pretty catchy. I like that.
Yeah, you guys decide. We can open a special account, you know, other than our funds one, and do it that way, whatever. You know, Ray is one of the trustees, and he's also the assistant. He put me in the chair. I mean, he said, here, this is what you have to do. So now he's going to be, he's a trustee. So we're working on it together with all the other members that we have. So whatever you guys decide, if it's okay with Claire, it's probably okay with me. The bank, you know, would go directly to the bank and nobody can touch it.
Well, Claire, why don't you talk about what other segments are you planning on shooting, or do you already have, you know, other areas in the video? Have you filmed any other places besides Yakima?
Yes, we have. We filmed in New Orleans. We filmed at Morro Bay. We filmed up and down the California, the Central Valley there.
Nice.
We were well fed the entire time, well looked after. And then, of course, all across Seattle as well, collecting stories. So we have something like over 50 something interviews and hours and hours and hours of tape to get through.
Wow.
Claire,
so this is like a life's work for us.
Claire, question. The music on the presentation was so adequate. It was beautifully orchestrated, and especially going up to the top of that church, it fitted right in. Who do you have a special musical coordinator for the entire film? Is that what, or do you go looking at the film and then you add this music later on?
The music, I think, gets added later on, and what we really, really want to do is to get original music done for each of the episodes. As you can see, not all of our history can't be contained in just one movie. So we're planning to do like a bunch of shorts similar to what you saw for Yakima, with original music and proper sound design, just so that the story is super like a punch in the gut.
Perfectly with what we were